the most Russian-American Timothy Kirby. Hello, Tim.
Hello, friends. Good to be here. So thank you for the warm introduction.
Yeah, we haven't seen each other for quite a long time, probably half a year passed by since our first meetings.
Right now, a lot of things depend on Trump. It depends on if he is going to do what he needs to do to make this war in Ukraine end like he promised. And it seems so far like that's happening. It looks like they've cut a lot of the military support, if not all of it. That is a very key factor. It's going to be a big meeting essentially between the United States, Russia, China, and India are going to maybe take a look at how the world is going to look without Europe. Europe is being thrown under the bus, it would seem. Now's the time to smash London, to finally end the British Empire and take Canada, take Greenland, and create that Fortress America, this American land empire that has a lot to fix.
To make Great Britain island again.
Get rid of them and
Very funny.
Zvezda Holding presents Dynamic Spectrum Talks now.
Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Dynamic Spectrum Talks podcast, where we talk to interesting people from all over the world and seek common ground between peoples and nations. We strive to understand each other better and trying to break down artificially created dividing lines between us. I'm Anna Shafran, and this is my colleague, Yuri Lindra.
Hello, everyone.
As we say in Russia, all new is forgotten old, Timothy.
Oh, okay.
And we preserve our traditions. This is why today we have invited a special guest, a close friend to Zvezda Analytica, Zvezda Analytics editorial team, blogger and journalist, originally from the United States of America, and as he calls himself, the most Russian-American Timothy Kirby. Hello, Tim.
Hello, friends. Good to be here. So thank you for the warm introduction.
Yeah, we haven't seen each other for quite a long time, probably half a year passed by since our first meeting. So we are very glad to
in fact, I'm actually a little bit offended. Anna, you didn't notice that I have gotten thinner by 4 belt loops. My belt has gone 4 notches thinner, and you didn't even notice.
Incredible.
I was expecting you to, talk about how beautiful I look, full of muscles.
One of the most handsome men.
Thank you.
Great success. Okay. Well done.
Well, the doctor kind of ordered me to change my diet, so I'm going to be, I guess, thin for the rest of my life now.
Congratulations, Timothy.
Yeah, so right now, Russians are observing what they call Lent or post, and I have to live on post for the rest of my life now. So I'll be thin. Yes.
Tim, please forgive us, but we won't talk much about you and your success and development. But we'll talk about Russian-American relations because this is
Timothy Kirby.
As well, definitely, because this is a most hot topic. Everybody's talking about these days. If we're talking about the global politics, geopolitics, we've seen that the old administration or new administration in the White House, it depends on the angle we look at the White House. We see there are several steps from them towards Russia in order to restore or somehow to start communicate with Moscow, because for the past several years there was almost zero contacts between the countries, between the two great nations, which is not good. Let's say, and we see opportunities and intentions to restore at least some sort of constructive relations between our countries. And this is why my first question, obvious one, I need to ask: how do you see from your perspective these new trends, and what will be the outcomes of these attempts to restore normal relations between Russia and the United States? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, the outcomes really depend mostly on the United States. Like you even just mentioned, how I believe from the start of the special military operation to the very last day of his presidency, Biden didn't talk to Putin once. And that is a very, maybe if it was like a smaller nation, an island out in the Pacific Ocean, not talking to the Russian president, that's okay. But when it's the United States, that's a big problem. And right now, a lot of things depend on Trump. It depends on if he is going to do what he needs to do to make this war in Ukraine end like he promised. And it seems so far like that's happening. It looks like they've cut a lot of the military support, if not all of it. That is a very key factor, cutting that off. Essentially, the big scandal with Zelenskyy was another one where he really proved to the American public that Zelenskyy is, let's just say, at the very least, not appreciative, but not quite who he says he is. And essentially it all depends on the Ukrainian project. If Trump cuts this off, gets rid of it, that's the real major point of contention. Then it's a question of discussing security between Russia and the United States. Because if we remember, I believe it was January 10th, 2022, is when the Russians submitted to the Biden administration basically some of their points of where they'd want to start a negotiation about how to redraw the map of security for Europe. And after a lot of death and a lot of years of fighting, it looks like we've returned to that point again. And Trump is going to need to, after giving up on Project Ukraine, he is going to need to work out some sort of security architecture or agreement with the Russians. Some people in Russia like to call that Yalta 2.0, in honor of the big meeting between Stalin, Churchill, and
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt was still alive. And when they sort of drew up what the map of the world would look like after the war.
You see, in Russia, we see the current, let's say, not a problem, it's a number of problems altogether. Because if we fix the Ukrainian issue, the Ukrainian deal, it doesn't mean that in future we won't be in a conflict, because old architecture of security now is heavily undermined, almost destroyed. So there should be a new basic agreement on how all the problems in future could be solved
that's what I
between the
just
great
said.
powers.
That is that the first thing is to end the war in Ukraine, and end the war in Ukraine in a way that isn't insane or dangerous. And then it's going to be the big discussion about what the security architecture of the future is going to look like. I heard someone the other day, I can't remember which Russian analyst, maybe it was your colleague, Mr. Shkolnikov, said something like that it's going to be a big meeting essentially between the United States, Russia, China, and India are going to maybe take a look at how the world is going to look without Europe. Europe is being thrown under the bus, it would seem, which is probably maybe good for the future of humanity. So, there's definitely going to have to be a big agreement about how things are going to work, who has this many missiles, who has bases here and where, will there even be a NATO? Because if you look, Trump has, especially in this presidency, really started to press on NATO. That basically he says Article 5 doesn't count unless you pay 5% of your GDP, which is a lot of money for especially smaller European nations. So essentially, Trump has, in his first presidency, but in this presidency, he really wants NATO to turn into something profitable. Something where if the United States is going to do it and provide protection like the mafia does, then the mafia's got to make money on it. This has to be a sort of winning proposition. And in that way, because NATO is not, I think, inherently something that's ever going to be profitable to the United States, he's kind of quietly getting rid of it.
Business project.
Yeah, well, that's the way Trump sees everything. And that's one of the things that's very good is Trump really does look at the world through business. And I think he even looks at this war in Ukraine as, okay, so I've paid $350 billion, or we as a collectively have paid for what? To risk World War III to gain what? What's the deal? And that's where this whole thing about the rare earth metals comes in, because again, the business thing is, okay, I inherited a really bad deal as president, minus $350 billion. I want to get out of this bad deal something worth $500 billion-ish dollars. That's a buyout. Trump wants to just buy the United States out of this war.
With some profit.
Yeah, maybe with some profit, or at least break even and end this toxic deal. That's how he sees things from a business standpoint. I do know that Trump periodically mentions about how people are dying and all that, but ultimately he really looks at things from the business standpoint. And for American society, that's very understandable. I've even told you guys in the past that the thing about Trump is, when you talk about, people are dying somewhere, no one cares. Some people care who are more intellectual and concerned about the world, but the average person doesn't care. We in this room, we're not thinking about the plight of the average African. They're not us. They're far away. They're abstract. But when Trump tells the average American, $350 billion, $350 billion, billions spent on this. This man who showed up to the White House, wouldn't wear a suit, insults America. You see? he really is playing to the sort of sense that the average American really thinks from their own standpoint. They think about their own personal economics, the economics of America. And so he's making a very good advertisement with his rhetoric that we need to get the hell out of this war. And the average American shouldn't support this war because it's stupid. It doesn't get you, average American, does the war in Ukraine get you anything? Judging by the prices at your grocery store, no.
So if we are talking about Russia and United States, the key stumbling block remains the situation in Ukraine. Donald Trump's administration is indeed taking all possible steps to resolve it and is gaining trust and a positive response from Russia, something that can't be said about Ukraine. The whole world has seen footage of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's recent embarrassing visit to Washington. I suggest to watch a little episode of this meeting.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very
you will
good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position.
I
You don't
was
have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not playing
cards.
cards.
Right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
So, Tim, how was this perceived by American public and the media, and what do you personally think about all of this?
Okay, well, one thing that the average person doesn't understand about how politics works is that you can't just do something that's morally good or nice or pleasant. In politics, for some reason, everything has to have some sort of justification behind it. And whether this meeting was sort of like a pro wrestling match where the anger was fake and Trump sort of drew Zelenskyy into a trap, which some people think, or whether they naturally just had a big argument, ultimately, it makes Zelenskyy look bad, and now Trump is justified in saying, well, look, he doesn't appreciate us. Look at this bad behavior. Look at this. I have this excuse to not support Ukraine. If Trump came into office and completely removed every form of support for Ukraine immediately, again, that could be sort of like a Russiagate thing. What is he doing? It doesn't make sense. But now the United States has the sort of logic, the justification to dump Ukraine. Even people like famous murder for money Lindsey Graham has even come out and been like, well, Zelenskyy went too far. He went too far. When you lose Lindsey Graham, you've lost everything.
That was
in terms
funny,
of the war.
yeah, because he was feeding Zelenskyy basically from his hand all these years, and now he said, no, you're completely evil.
Well, yeah, and so because of that event, that was the necessary sort of political spectacle that justifies changing attitudes towards Ukraine. Again, this is always in politics, and this is one of the things where normal people don't understand why you can't just do things. You have to have some sort of excuse as to why you do them. And so we have the excuse, and we can already see that since that meeting, Trump has removed, or someone within the Trump administration has stopped providing a lot of like the targeting information to the Ukrainians and a lot of the sort of like Pentagon-based information that they need to fight. So what does that mean? Essentially, it means that they can't make long-range strikes into Russia anymore if that information is correct. So this pro wrestling type spectacle happened, and now already Trump has been justified in getting rid of the targeting, pushing back on this. Let's freeze all the military aid we've been given. That's frozen too. That's a big thing because roughly half the military aid the Ukrainians got, plus or minus, as we say in Russian, came from the United States. So, yeah, that event was very important in world history. And again, it was public. It was played for the cameras very well. And remember, Trump is a reality TV show star.
Tim, a spot question. Do you think that these steps from Donald Trump and from the current U.S. administration in Washington is to make Zelenskyy to become more flexible? Because we know that there is a conflict in general. It's a proxy war between Russia and the United States. Mark Rubio just recently said about it. But we also know that it's happening in the Ukrainian soil. It means basically if we want to start a peace settlement, Ukraine should be included in this process. So, but we know that Zelenskyy Zelenskyy and his administration in Kyiv doesn't want to go to the negotiations, and it means that you need to force them. In order to force Zelenskyy to sit in front of the table and to speak with the Russian counterparts, there should be some sort of pressure, external pressure. And all these measures you just said about, you just mentioned, is just to make sure that Zelenskyy become more flexible. Is it correct? Or I'm speculating?
I don't know, but I do know one thing. Both the Russian side and the American side, at least when they're talking to each other, say they want to have a new president in Ukraine. They essentially need someone to sign things. One Russian political commentator, I forgot who, said essentially we need to get some sort of cat or other animal to be president of Ukraine, stick its paw in paint, put the paw on a piece of paper, and sign whatever agreement that America and Russia work out. And I think that that's the issue, that both sides need just somebody who's going to sit there and sign whatever Washington and Moscow agree to. And so, yeah, that's sort of part of it. Plus, also remember, Trump is very flexible in his thinking. And, you know, if the war just sort of ends because now they have no support and this whole thing collapses,
Okay,
he's still going to get Western Ukraine. No matter what happens, Russia is not going to be interested in occupying Lvov or anything. And Trump can, let's just say, squeeze value out of that.
Tim, you just said that from your perspective, Donald Trump is very flexible in his mindset. And this is why I also need to ask you the following question. Recently, we have seen his State of the Nation address in the parliament. He said a lot of interesting things there, especially about what he did and something that he's going to do. What do you think about his project to enlarge United States by incorporating Canada and Greenland, and about all these measures that the new administration is implementing in the US currently, right now?
Well, I can only hope that the logic behind these plans is that he wants to make America from being the capital city of a global empire, which has caused a lot of suffering for the United States. I know it's caused a lot of suffering around the world, especially in Ukraine and in the Arab world, but it's also caused a lot of suffering having to have the greatest wealth acquired in human history be spent on this globalist project. But if he can make the United States no longer be the capital of a global empire and turn it into a more, let's just say, land empire that's focused on just sort of being and defending itself, that is great. Let's do that. It's almost like he opened a Geopolitics textbook 101 and thought of the most basic strategy that the United States could employ, which is, again, Fortress America as the concept. But again, Fortress America is just Geopolitics 101. If you are in a position where the United States controls the entire North American continent up to like the Rio Grande River, that's fantastic. The Canadians also speak English. They're just like us, except they don't really like our healthcare system. If Trump can deal with that hurdle, it'll be a good thing. Like I have asked people in the past, well, about this whole annexation of Canada thing. If you ask Canadians to vote for their next leader, either Trudeau or Trump would win. The only thing they're worried about is the healthcare situation, in all honesty.
This is why Trump appointed Robert Kennedy to fix this problem.
Well, yeah, and also because, guys, let's call a spade here. If you travel around the United States, especially right now, and you travel around Russia, you can see the difference in people. There are a lot of sickly people in the United States, and Robert Kennedy Jr. is almost certain that our bad diets, all the wonderful things that color our food, questionable things that go into our water, the runoff from all the hormones that they give to all the farm animals is really having a bad effect on society. And I think you can really see it when you're walking around Walmart. So it's a big mission, curing the health crisis in America, not just within the corrupt hospital system, but also in terms of the what we're eating and what we're consuming. It's a big task. But if he can at least start to do it, that would probably convince a lot of Canadians to come over. If you had the opportunity to interview a particular historian, his name is Matt Ehret. He is the greatest Canadian historian you will ever hear. He might be the only one. Just kidding, Matt. He would explain to you how, in a lot of ways, London has always used Canada as a sort of mechanism of influence against the United States. London is the source of the first Congress of Zionists was in London. The British Empire created the Wahhabists. You go down the line. Thomas Malthus, the sort of first real thinker that talks about the need for population reduction, British. Eugenics comes from England. A lot of evil ideas have come from England, and a lot of rich people have supported them there. And I think that Trump, if he really is an anti-globalist, he really sees London as this sort of hotbed problem. And if he's also very realist in his political thinking, now's the time to smash London, to finally end the British Empire and take Canada, take Greenland, and create that Fortress America, this American land empire that has a lot to fix.
To make Great Britain island again.
Get rid of them and
Very funny. So, okay, Timothy, you've been a Russian citizen for quite some time now. You have a Russian passport, and you've even created a project to help foreigners to move to Russia called American Village.
Yes.
What's with this project now? Could you tell us, please?
Well, the first homes have been built and the first families have arrived. So the one thing I can say is I have video evidence that I'm not a con artist, that the people who did trust me with large sums of money to build them a life in Russia, they're getting their life in Russia. In fact, one of the reasons I'm wearing nice clothing today is I have to go and deal with bureaucracy related to that project now. So I'm hoping that there will be another sort of second or third wave of people who are interested in it. But unfortunately, the cost of real estate in Russia is kind of high. Russia's an expensive country now. You can't just simply arrive in Russia with $10,000 and buy a house. You have to have a significant amount of resources. So, yeah. So hopefully, maybe in the future, I'll be able to find investors who can sort of build the stuff and allow the people who immigrate to pay it back, over time, something like a mortgage or whatever. But we'll see what that happens. So anyways, I'm kind of happy with the project. It's just small. We only have a couple families who are able to do it. But again, that's because moving to Russia is really expensive. It's really expensive.
But the situation is changing in America if we are talking about values.
Yeah.
How many people now want to move to Russia if we compare with previous time?
Well, I'll put it this way. If that bullet that hit Trump's ear would have been 1 inch closer to his head, the number would be even bigger. So maybe when it comes to America, there's a little bit more optimism with Trump. But, the problem, basically Trump in Russia looks like this huge phenomenon because the U.S. president has the power to really deal with foreign policy. And you see Trump is going nuts on his foreign policy. When it comes to changing America on the inside, that's a bit more of the realm of Congress. And Congress is not quite as Trumpian as we'd like them to be. So it's kind of, for a lot of people who are considering moving to Russia that are American, the question is, can Trump complete his Trump revolution and make America great again? And if so, when? Because people ask, well, Tim, do you want to go back to America now that Trump's in office? Well, I left when I was, 22 or whatever, and I'm in my mid-40s now. Sometimes things take a long time to change, Things might not happen so great, so fast. And also, for Europeans, Europe is screwed. Trump is just ditching Project Europe. He's created almost like the anti-Marshall Plan. Europe is just this sort of leech sucking value out of America, especially through NATO. And I think Trump is just going to throw Europe to the dogs. But unfortunately, Europe's politicians love their globalist policies. They love destroying their own native populations. And so I think the interest of English-speaking Europeans has not diminished at all.
So it means American Village can be larger and larger in Russia.
From the very beginning, it was always for people who speak English. So that way they could sort of, help each other out, know their neighbors and all that. So, especially, guess what, for people in the Netherlands, the government said they were going to destroy 70% of the farms in the Netherlands because there's too much nitrogen in the soil. For you Dutch people, hey, you want to buy a house in Russia? Talk to me. Because that government has not changed that plan to destroy all the traditional farmers in the Netherlands for the most part.
Timothy, very interesting conversation. Thank you very, very much. Today we have conversation with the most famous Russian American, Timothy Kirby, a journalist and blogger.
And we're looking forward to welcome you once again.
Well, with great pleasure. I'm always happy to be here.
As soon as better.
It's bizarre speaking English. Every time I usually give an interview, it's always in Russian, so it is very weird to speak my native language to someone other than my children nowadays.
By the way, it is very easy to understand you.
Oh, well, I should have.
Your English is normal English.
Well, because
I can understand.
After influence of the Russian language, your English became very understandable.
Well, yeah, because I live overseas and I talk to foreign people. When I was a teenager, you can't talk like that to people if you.
Definitely, I agree with you. 100%.
Like even my grandmother would yell at me because I'd, there's like the irregular verbs. Well, in Cleveland we have a couple of our own. Like instead of bring, brought. A lot of people say brang. Man, I'll brang it with me. That's not even a word, but when I was a kid, I'll brang it. And I don't talk like that anymore, so you can't.
So thank you very much for your English, understandable English.
For improving my English from the ghetto level that I was born with. All right, thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. Goodbye.
And see you soon.
Zvezda Holding presents Dynamic Spectrum Talks now.